Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Two Docs and a Grunt. As usual, I am Doc Luis Fonseca, U.S. Navy Hospital Corpsman, retired after 22 years of active duty Navy service. During my time in the Navy, I was deployed to Operation Iraqi Freedom and pushed into the Battle of Al Nazariya on March 23rd of 2003. For my actions on that day, I was awarded the Navy Cross. As usual, please do not, as usual, I'm tongue tied today. As usual, please do not forget that although we do have Dr. Barry as one of our hosts, we are not here to deliver any medical advice. If you feel that you need to see a specialist or a doctor, please, we advise you to go see your primary care physician or your mental health care team. As well, although all of us have spent time in the military, we do not represent nor do we speak for the Department of Defense or any of its entities. And as always, some of the subjects we do cover could be a little triggering, so we advise everyone to please view at your own leisure. And up next will be our partner, Doc Barry.
Hi, folks. My name is Andrew Barry, also known as Doc Barry. I am a psychologist and psychoanalyst, and I specialize in working with veterans and first responders battling post-traumatic stress disorder. For tonight, Nate's going to handle the military bio. They've asked me to go first, or to do my little part, and Nate will go after me. I met Mike, our guest tonight, Mike Anderson, Gunny Mike, on a website upwards of 20 years ago, and super supportive of our efforts for mental health for years now. He's been right behind us. And Luis and I were very fortunate to be able to meet him when we were out at the American Psychological Association conference in Denver. It was a great evening of fellowship, stories, sick jokes, and the usual harmless nonsense. But one thing I will tell you, Mike was very open about what he saw, what he's been through. Uh, very, he basically just emptied the tank with us that night. I was very impressed by the honesty of it, the vulnerability of it, and the sheer strength of it. And I mean that. Thanks for being on with us today, man. Now
Thanks,
over
Doc.
to Nate.
And I'm Nate Emery. I'm the token grunt for today. I have 33 years in the DoD. I did 12 years enlisted time and another 10 years as an officer, and the rest was a contractor or government civilian. And my combat tours were in Operation Desert Storm, and I was in Mogadishu, Somalia. And tonight, our guest, Mike Anderson. Got a long bio here today, but I'm kind of bulletizing it to get us going here. Joined the Marine Corps in April '92. I went to boot camp at Marine Corps Recruit Depot, San Diego, 3rd Battalion, India Company, Platoon 3047, for anybody who wants to look him up and or needs to find him again. He went to Marine Combat Training at Camp Pendleton, and then he went on for his A School training at Naval Air Station, Millington, Tennessee, where he became an airframe mechanic. His MOS is 6057. And then he went on to a C school at Naval Air Station, Jacksonville, Florida, where they had F-18s and FRAMP with VFA 106. So it's a naval squadron, right? Fighter Attack 106. And
Yep. An F-18 squadron.
yeah, and then April of '93, he was assigned to the Marine Fighter Attack Squadron 122, Marine Corps Air Station, Beaufort, South Carolina. He got promoted to Lance Corporal. He was there. And then June of '93, he joined, he was FAP'd to the Fleet Assistance Program to Marine Aviation Logistics Squadron 31, the Airframes Division, doing intermediate level maintenance. And Marine Corps changed that or made a new MOS and moved all those people that were trained to MOS 6092, which eventually became 6062, which in the aviation side and the communication side, they're always changing stuff like that. His first unit deployment he did with Marine Fighter Attack Squadron 122 with the Aviation Logistics Squadron Detachment to Marine Corps Air Station Iwakuni, Japan from July to December of 1995, where he's promoted to corporal. And in 1997, he did a second unit deployment to Iwakuni, promoted to Staff Sergeant in 1998. And then June of 99 to June of 2002, he was assigned to Beaufort, South Carolina again. But so they went to Marine Corps Air Station Fatima, Okinawa, Japan, with Marine Aviation Logistics Squadron 36 with the Airplanes Division. And while he was there, he got assigned. And this is hard for people to understand who haven't been deployed to Okinawa. So while he was deployed to Okinawa, then he got attached to a MU, Marine Expeditionary Unit, 31 Special Operations capable. January of 2001, deployed with a medium. What is that? HMM. It's a Marine medium helicopter squad.
Medium help.
Yeah, 265 reinforced.
CH-46s.
Yeah, 46s. Oh, that's right, because the heavies are the 53s.
Yep.
That's right. And he was on the USS Essex.
Yeah, they make it.
LHD-2 until 1 September of 2001. And while he was with them, he did exercises with the Australian Army and Navy. And then September 11th comes along, and they find themselves locked down. But anybody who's been in Okinawa for a typhoon knows what lockdown means. They're Typhoon Condition 1. And while he was locked down, he received a call telling them they were going to redeploy yet again once they were in recovery from the typhoon. And got promoted to Staff Sergeant in October of 2001. And while he's deployed at the 31st MU, they were told they were going to go to Kandahar, which completely understand that because with the unit that I got assigned to in 2003 was Max 4, and I know that the guys who were Max 4 they went to Kandahar, and but his ship got caught in the typhoon, and due to things that happen on ships at sea and storms that a lot of people don't realize, the aircraft were not secured to the flight deck properly, and so the helicopters had some damage due to rotor blades, and Harriers had seawater in the intakes of their engines. And so they had to go down to Australia for a few weeks. And so they watched the war against the Taliban. And then they ended up returning to Okinawa in November. The mission got scrubbed, due to timing. June 2002 to June of 2008, he was at Marine Corps Air Station Yuma, Arizona, with Marine Aviation Logistics Squadron 13. In 2004, he was assigned to the 15th Marine Expeditionary Unit, Special Operation Capable. And then in December, he deployed with HMM 165 Reinforced on the USS, I can never pronounce this correctly, Bonhomme Richard.
Bonhomme Richard. Just call it Bonnie Dick.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, the Bonnie Dick. I want to know who the first person was who came up with that nickname. But LHD-6, a helicopter dock ship, is what it is. When he was with them, he was on Operation Unified Assistance, which was a Pacific tsunami. People remember that. And they got routed towards Guam or to Guam to pick up non-governmental organizations and supplies to provide humanitarian relief to Banda Aceh province in Indonesia. His first combat deployment, Arabian Gulf, immediately afterwards, he went with the MU. They put the ground combat element ashore at Kuwait, who then patrolled to Baghdad for 6 weeks, while the air combat element flew support missions over Iraq and Al Asad Air Base during OIF 5.1, 5.2. September of 2005, he returned to Yuma, and then 2005, he was involved with his first aircraft mishap. He was in downtown Yuma. He was a commander of the guard, ran the crash site and guard detail. So there's some stuff that you're carrying from that. February, September of 2006, second combat deployment to OIF 6.1 with MALS 16, forward reinforced Al Asad Air Base. In September of 2006, he got promoted to Gunnery Sergeant while deployed. In late 2006, he was assigned to Crash Recovery Team at Staff NCOIC at Yuma, Search and Rescue Squadron, and a UH-1 helicopter crashed in Box Canyon on the Army post at Yuma Proving Grounds. Five people died in that crash, and he was part of the team that gathered the debris to heel lift the airframe out of the canyon for the investigation. And I'm sure that wasn't pretty either. 2006, he was diagnosed with PTSD. 2008 to 2014, stationed in a Marine Corps Air Station Cherry Point, assigned to Aviation Logistics Squadron 14. I think you probably hit all of the malls. Malls, MALS,
Yep.
for people who don't know. 2011, deployed with Malls 40, Camp Leatherneck, Baffin Airfield, Afghanistan for Operation Enduring Freedom, and spent some time at FOB Dwyer, and it was his third and last combat deployment. And then he retired in May of 2014. He's married to the former Airman First Class, Sally Baird, U.S. Air Force, and he's got,
Yep.
I see one daughter, correct? Victoria? Born?
Yep. One daughter and 3 sons.
Man, and she was born while you were in boot camp. Whew, that's tough.
She was born shortly before I went to boot camp.
Okay. Oh, yeah, January 92, and you went to boot camp in April. Got it. So
Right.
I'm going to throw it back over to Doc Barry for his thought-provoking question, since he knows you well, and we don't have to do the whole interpersonal thing to get to know you first. He can just pull Band-Aids off.
Thanks, Nate.
Look,
Hello?
Okay, I unmuted myself. Now you can hear me all the way from New York. I got a big mouth. All right. Well, from only if you're up to it. Remember, we don't go any place in this you don't want to go, but the most memorable aspect of the conversation that you and I had, Mike, was the, shall we say, helicopter cleanup.
Yeah.
Only if you're up to it. The floor is yours.
Okay, so first off, I had a real problem when I first got out, and I was diagnosed through the VA with severe PTSD. I have friends who've lost arms and legs. I've had friends who've lost Marines under their command, and all I was basically what you call a fob. I stayed on the fobs while I was overseas, and I didn't feel like I did anything except keep CAS and CASEVAC flying. But the doctors made me understand that there are a couple of things that compounded to contribute to the PTSD, and one of those things was the helicopter crash in 2006, right after I got back from my second tour. So there was a search and rescue helicopter, UH-1, that crashed in a box canyon on Yuma Proving Grounds, and it killed all aboard. I think there was one. I think there was one survivor, Lance Corporal, that made it, but the rest of the people perished, and there were 5 deaths. So when you're part of the aviation logistics squadron, like I was, we run quality assurance for everybody on the flight line. We're basically the Marine Aircraft Group's quality assurance department. And when you do an aircraft crash investigation, you have to get the quality assurance inspectors together to, gather everything that you need from the crash site. So they came to us and they said, hey, we're making a crash team. We need you as a staff NCOIC to go out there to be the senior enlisted guy and to direct the efforts of the other enlisted personnel that are going out there with you. So they took us out in trucks. We had to hike out about a mile and a half or 2 miles to where the helicopter crashed. It was in a small box canyon. When I say a small box canyon, it was just big enough to fit the helicopter in. There was probably 3 feet of clearance beside the helicopter and 4 or 5 feet of clearance in front of the helicopter. And when it crashed upside down. So we proceeded to cut the tail boom off, put it on a stretcher, carry it back to the truck. We proceeded to try to, pick up all the pieces that were scattered around the canyon, the pieces of the airframe and the rotor head and stuff like that. While the crash recovery guys were using like jaws of life and balloons, like crash airbags, to lift the helicopter enough so that they could strap it. And once they strapped it, they flew in a CH-53 to airlift it back to the air station where they could do the investigation. As part of the investigation, you have to recover all of the pieces of the helicopter. You can't lose anything. So we couldn't take the risk that something would fall out of this damaged helicopter on the way back. So the colonel who's in charge came over to me and said, "Hey, Gunny, get a couple of your lance corporals and send them into the aircraft to make sure that you clean up everything that's in there. Pick up all of the, broken instruments, anything that you need to do to get all of the loose pieces out of the aircraft before we heli-lift it out of there." And I was like, "Roger that, sir." And he walked away. I turned around to the staff sergeant that was there. I said, "Hey, man, we're not sending these 18-year-old lance corporals in here. We'll go." So the staff sergeant and I climbed through the chin bubble of the UH-1 into the cockpit. And I didn't remember this until I went through extensive therapy. EMDR therapy helped me. I mean, before I went through EMDR, I just say, "Yeah, we cleaned up the crash," and that was it. I didn't go into details. I remembered a lot of the details after I started doing the EMDR because they were things that were tough. We crawled into the UH-1 and we unbolted these blood-soaked seats from the cockpit and carried them out, picked up all of the pieces. We were crawling around inside this upside-down cabin that was full of hydraulic fluid, body fluids, medical waste, fuel, and basically picking up all the loose things and getting them gathered up so that we could get them out of there. We spent a couple hours doing that, and then they heli-lifted the airframe back to the air station, and we hiked out, got on the trucks, and drove back to Marine Corps Air Station Yuma, which is probably 25 minute drive away. And the whole time I just sat in the back of the truck quiet. We were it was like in the back of a deuce and a half, with a canvas cover over it. And we were back there, all the young Marines were back there being quiet or smoking and joking, whatever they were doing. And we rode back. And I didn't remember that when I got back to the air station, I went into the squadron, stripped, showered, got new coveralls issued by supply, new boots issued by supply, and threw away all the stuff I was wearing. I just went home. When I got home, my wife was like, "Are you all right?" And I was like, "Yeah, we just cleaned up a crash. That's all we did." And that was basically it for me. I mean, the crash investigation wasn't something that I was a part of. I was just a part of cleaning up at the crash site. So for me, it ended there with me going home and saying, "Yeah, we got it cleaned up." And then the investigation was done afterwards. But that was one of the things that was really rough on me, knowing that, I had brothers who died in that crash, and I was crawling around inside that cabin. And it's not pretty to say, but I was crawling around in the leftovers after they, pulled the bodies out, whatever the medical teams left behind and the rescue teams left behind. That's what we were crawling around in for a couple of hours. So that was one of the things that contributed to the PTSD that I have.
Now, Mike, I got a question for you on that aspect, because you said something that that I think a lot of good leaders, good senior personnel would probably do, just like you did, which was, tell another staff NCO, like, hey, look, our young 18, 19-year-old men and women, let's kind of shield them from this, right? Let's shield them from this
Yeah.
horrific event, and let's us go in there and take care of it. Do on the aviation side of the house, when it comes to mishaps, that's the actual terminology for it, correct? If I'm not mistaken,
Yes, sir.
a mishap. When it comes to these mishaps, besides the rescue crew, in the Navy on a ship, they're the ones that wear like the red vest. But for Marines on the ground or whatever, do they put y'all through any type of training to try to prepare y'all for such a horrific event, or is it just a PowerPoint slide like, hey, when a helo goes down, this is what we go do, and it's kind of skipped over?
Okay, so there are, I can't remember the exact number, either 32 or 38 managed and monitored programs that are controlled by the Quality Assurance Department of the aviation squadrons. It's called the NAMP, the Naval Aviation Maintenance Program, and they have protocols set out for, taking care of hazmat and monitoring hydraulic contamination and dealing with gas-free engineering and all these things that you need to run an aviation squadron. There's rules. Before they went digital, there was 7 volumes, big, volumes that you had to go through that listed everything. And there's warnings throughout those volumes that they always tell you they're written in blood. And they're right. They are written in blood. They come from the past, from history, and they tell you what to do and what not to do. So for crash recovery, that was one of the programs that was outlined in the NAMP. It told you how to do it. It told you what to take care of, as far as cleaning stuff up, getting everything together, and getting everything ready for the investigation, everything like that. But as far as getting any kind of heads up for this, I didn't get any heads up for it. I mean, it was just, they walked in and they went, who's the airframes guy? You're the airframes guy. We got to go clean up an airframe. Let's go. And I need you because you're a gunnery sergeant and you're going to be the staff NCOIC. So basically I was out there to do what the colonel wanted done when we were at the crash site, and he was kind of the one that was running it.
Got it. It definitely sounds to me like that part of our job, of our mission, right? Whether you're on the aviation side of the house, whether you're a motor transportation company, right? Because motor transport companies have mishaps too, right? We've heard of 7 tons rolling over, Humvees getting in bad accidents, Marine soldiers, whoever's driving them, and passing away. Even to a certain extent, even in the medical healthcare profession, I'm gonna propose this question the way it's been proposed to me so many times, and I always I don't know. If I had the answer, I'd be a multimillionaire. But it's, how do we prepare our men and women to face this reality of our job, right? Like you said, Mike, it's outlined in the books on the steps that we're supposed to take when a mishap happens, right? Secure the scene, whatever it is. And I'm just talking, very vaguely. Secure the scene, secure equipment, call the proper authorities to come in, and then they do what they do. And then whoever comes in will start cleaning up. But how do we really train and prepare our men and women to have that resilient mindset? We talk a lot about resiliency on this podcast, but that resilient mindset, right? To be prepared, in a sense, to confront the the ugliest parts of our profession, right? Which is losing a brother or sister, and especially in such a heroic, not heroic way, horrific, very horrible way, I should say. But how do we prepare for that? What's up, Doc?
I'll go first with an answer, not the answer. You can describe something on the printed page in the King's Good English and have it edited and make it grammatically polished and perfect. Only goes so far. My opinion, take high resolution pictures of this sort of thing.
Well,
Show those pictures to the trainees and say, this is what it looks like. If you can get footage, God forbid, of this sort of thing, get that
don't
too. And
yeah,
last
don't
thing
get me wrong. I mean, don't get me wrong. We were exposed to stuff like that. I remember in A school in Millington, watching a video of a guy who got sucked into an A6 engine. You know, and they were telling us, "Hey, be careful around aircraft, especially on the flight deck. You know, this can happen." And he actually got, he got pulled back out and he was saved. He looked like a big bruise, but so we were exposed to that kind of thing, and we did follow the SOPs for cleaning up a crash site. I'm sure they dealt more with the grisly aspect of it with the personnel who went in to recover the bodies, and I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but how do you prepare someone for something like that? I mean,
Right.
Grunt's going to combat all the time, and they lose brothers all the time. And how are you going to tell a person, hey, you're going to experience this? They have to experience it. It's part of the job.
No, absolutely, and that's what I guess more I was trying to get to is grunts, combat. We think of all these combat MOSs that we always talk about. If you're not performing your duties correctly, that's going to cost somebody else's your life. In the medical field, as a corpsman, we do a lot of hands-on training, simulation training, but there's really, and I guess maybe I'm looking for like this blanketing that 100% shields all of us, right? But it doesn't. That's very unrealistic, right? But
you can't. It's a fact of military life, especially in operational situations.
100%. I guess I kind of look at it now that we're talking about it, Mike, is as well as how you brought up grunts. We train grunts to face the enemy basically head on, right? Eyeball to eyeball per se. Obviously, it's not back like in the Civil War eras where we would line up in a line and shoot muskets at each other. But we ask these grunts to take out a threat in a very violent way. Yet we still have some men and women that, when it comes to it, as much training as we've given them, they don't perform their duties. And I'm not harping on those men and women. I've seen it firsthand accounts. In the moments, was I upset? Absolutely. Where I am now at 45 years of my life, I can understand that that's a very, very difficult thing to ask a human being, right? To either face danger like that or to go into a situation to recover a fellow brother or sister that passed away in a very horrible way. Like it's not like you're picking up a whole body and you're like, oh well, what happened? They died of pneumonia or something. Like usually you're, like you said, Mike, you're picking up what's left over, what you can find, right?
Yeah, and you can't prepare people for doing some of the things that we do. I mean, you just got to know that those kind of things happen. I was aware that aircraft mishaps happened, and that they could be fatal. And part of my job as a collateral duty inspector, I was an inspector in MALS before I even got to quality assurance. I was in the shop and I was signing off on stuff and telling people it was ready for issue and it was safe for flight. And when you're putting your signature on that paperwork, hey, this is going in an aircraft that somebody's going to fly, and if there's a mishap, you know, they're going to come back and look at every single thing that was done. And if I did something wrong, then I'm going to be culpable. And so you're very aware of that stuff in the air wing. And so when an aircraft mishap happens, it's kind of one of those things where one of the things that you do is go, holy crap, did I, you know, is any of my gear that I signed off in that aircraft, first of all, and second of all, what the hell happened? And, you know, oh my gosh, especially if somebody dies. But
Yeah.
you know, it's just it's a fact of the job, and I knew it from the time that I got in the air wing and into maintenance, that I was signing off stuff that people were trusting their life to when they were going flying. And I think that's what made it so hard when I crawled into that helicopter, because, you know, it's
all
it
the
was
what
rough.
ifs,
And at that time, we didn't know what happened. Since that time, we have figured out what happened, and I'm not going to throw shade at anybody or anything. I'll just say that it was a preventable. It was a preventable crash.
I think that's always the worst. And you said it earlier too, Mike, right? To know that you signed your name on a piece of paper, that paper was basically giving those pilots the okay to, hey, take off, sir, ma'am, right? Your ship, your airship is good to go, and to gun deck something like that, and to come back and not saying that's what happened in your case, but in other cases, like you said, these SOP, standard operating procedures, a lot of them are written in blood, right?
Yeah. There's a reason why the NAMP is seven volumes large, you know, and I'm talking about thick volumes too, 20 or 30 chapters per volume, covering everything that you need to know to operate safely in an aviation environment. And, you know, that testing that I went through to become a collateral duty inspector, or a quality assurance inspector, or a collateral duty quality insurance inspector, there are 3 different levels that I was signed off on. The testing that you have to do is in-depth testing. So you are very aware of the fact that, hey, you know, I'm signing this, I'm putting my signature on it, it's got to be good to go, because some pilot's going to look at that and say, okay, it's signed off, let's fly. And you don't ever gun deck anything.
Wow. Yeah, no, absolutely. You know, I came from the Amtrak world, the AAVs, and I don't know if you gentlemen remember, about maybe 7-8 years ago, we had 2 AAVs that went down. One of them was at the schoolhouse here in Del Mar, California, in Oceanside, Camp Pendleton. Ended up, I think it was a sergeant and 2 students ended up drowning in that. And then it was a few months later that we had another AAV go down, and that was where, like, it was like 8 or 10 Marines were inside of it, plus a Navy Corpsman. And both of them was because of gun decking. Someone just didn't do proper checks, and it could have been so preventable, so preventable. And it, because because of these helicopters, airplanes, and even Amtrak, for the most part, they're built to do what they're built to do, as long as the maintenance and everything is taken care of properly. So it's very sad. It's very heartbreaking when those mishaps happen, for sure.
No. And it's something you're very aware of as an inspector when your signature is going on stuff. Hey, this better be good. This better be good, because someone's kids are waiting for them to come home from that flight. You know, someone's wife is waiting for them to come home at the end of the day. And when they don't, you expect it in combat, but when you're in peacetime and you're just doing a training mission, which is what this was when they were doing a training mission when this helicopter crashed,
100%.
You don't expect stuff like that to happen.
Kind of wanted to get back to, or I wanted to address, you know, one of the questions that Doc Barry asked. I don't think it's possible to completely train people up to something like that, something that tragic, and not be affected by it. And the example I would give would be like, look at EMTs. You know, they're in it every single day, and they run into it every single day and it still affects them. I don't think you could take my therapist, who
Yep.
I think is very good
True.
as a clinician who specializes in PTSD. I don't think if you were to stick him in a combat situation and then bring him home, I don't think he would be untouched either. And I think a lot of it has to do with it's almost fundamentally unnatural to see people die in
Mhm.
Yeah.
an unnatural way. Even I don't think I think if you were completely untouched by it, I think you start to verge.
Would have bigger issues.
I think you start to verge on the edge of being psychotic.
Yeah.
And what I was going to finish off with is first preparing people, showing pictures, et cetera, et
Mhm.
cetera. What I was going to finish off with is we have a responsibility to say to these young people, this stuff may affect you, but we have no
Mhm.
idea how. Be honest with them about how it's going to affect them,
Yeah.
how bad it's going to affect them. But for heaven's sakes, let's start normalizing it now
Well, I
instead
Mm.
of, post damage, and say this may affect you. And guess what? And you guys have heard me say this 100 times, but for any new viewers, I'm going to say it again and again. You're reacting perfectly normally to an unbelievably abnormal set of circumstances. You're
Yeah.
not crazy, you're not weak, you're just in pain. So let's talk
Well,
about that
I
pain.
don't want to say that you're wrong, Duckberry, but I know for me it actually made it worse. So one of the schools that I went to, when the class was obvious the class was going to start falling asleep, and this was a school that had no graduation requirement. They could operate all year and not graduate a single person as long as they provided the training. And if the class looked like they were starting to fall asleep, they don't want to drop the whole class. So they would take a break and they'd pop in a videotape of headshots. It was law enforcement and military headshots. And yeah, it woke you up, but where I'm 30 years later and I have those in addition to my own crap now in my head. And it didn't do me any good. Now, granted, I went to that school after I'd been to combat twice, so maybe other people who had a different experience, but I didn't need the extra stuff. I had enough crap on my own. But
Yeah.
I
Well,
I
go ahead, Mike.
I'm not a professional. I'm not a professional therapist or psychoanalyst or psychologist or anything else. But it seems to me that people with a higher empathy
Mhm.
factor have more problems with PTSD. My father was in Vietnam. Um, he spent a whole year over there, and he got in, even as a finance guy. Somehow he got in 2 firefights while he was over there. Never talked about them. Never, you know, And I asked him when I started having problems with PTSD, Dad, how did you deal with this? And he was like, "What do you mean? How'd I deal with this? I mean, you just keep going." And I was like, my dad is not the same kind of person as I am. He just shrugged it off. Now I can look back now as an adult and I can see some of the things that I had to deal with were probably PTSD related, but he never talked to anybody, and he never talked to anybody in the family, and he certainly never went for any kind of treatment.
Right.
So
And I think it's just like you said, some people, you know, are just built in that way, right? We've spoken about this several times of how you can take 150 people and put them all in the exact same scenario, but you're going to get 150 different responses. And so I think that's the big question mark, right? Is how do we prepare our men and women to go do some of these things, recovery missions, or even go into combat, knowing that the possibility of losing a friend, is there, right, in a very horrific way. How do we prepare 10,000 people that are going to experience this, right, and to say, hey, but we're going to show you how to build a resilient mindset when everyone's going to process it differently. Everyone's going, Mike, your dad might have never spoken about it, but what about the stuff that he never spoke about, right? Why didn't he ever speak about it? Was that the way that he safeguarded himself to not go into into a depression or a PTSD episode or a flashback? We might never know, right?
I don't know. I talked to my grandfather before the end of his life. He passed in 95. I talked to him. He had been in Europe for 2 years during World War II. And when he came home, he slept with a 45 under his pillow. And he woke up one night looking across his sights at my grandmother on the other side of the bed with a black eye. And him and my
Wow.
grandmother slept in separate rooms for the rest of their lives. And that's how they dealt with it. But he told me, he said, yeah, this came from being overseas during the war.
Right.
So
I think for some people, I think training is good. And I think that it doesn't, despite what I've said, I don't think that I'm not saying that no training is the answer. If somebody gains something from it, that's good. But I think the most important thing we need to train to, and I don't know if they're doing it well now or not, but it's one thing to say, here's a phone number, hey, go talk to this person. It's another thing to have that as part of your testing, right? And say, okay, to give them, a scenario question. So-and-so is looking like this. This is what's happening. You've noticed this. What do you do? And to actually make you mentally walk through asking for help or getting somebody else help is probably an easier way, right? Because then you don't deflect it all by saying, I'm not going to be that way, right? If you walk through how I would help somebody else to do this and how I would get them help. I think gaming that would probably be very helpful for people, because now you don't have to cross such this big divide of asking for help. It's just the premise, without even saying it, is it's okay to ask for help. Here's how you do it.
Well, and that's what I was thinking. A lot of military guys, first responders, whatever, they think it's unmanly to ask for help, and I did too. The only reason that I got help and was diagnosed in 2006 is that my wife came to me and said, listen, my biological father went to prison for trying to kill my grandfather because he was an alcoholic with PTSD, and I'm not going to be married to an alcoholic with PTSD. Put down the bottle and go get help, or I'm leaving. And, I had 4 kids, and she was like, I will take the kids and leave. And that girl was serious. I mean, she's a trooper, and I love her very much. And I was like, there's no way that she's walking out on me. So I went and got help, and I was very fortunate and very lucky. The OIC that I worked for was a CW03. And, at the end of my tour there in quality assurance, right after I got done with the crash and 6 months worth of PTSD counseling, walking around honking like a goose, not being able to talk. I was stuttering, and twitching, and people were making fun of me, calling me goose call and all this other good shit. And when the gunner gave me my fit rep, he gave me my fit rep and a Navy comm, and I was like, sir, why did you write my fit rep this way? Why did you give me the Navy comm? I don't understand. I struggled. And he was like, Anderson, listen, you walked around here quacking like a duck. You were twitchy. You got angry easy, all this other good shit, but you still came in and you did your job, and you did it better than anybody else did. And you went and got help, and there's nothing wrong with that. And so you're going to be at the top of my tree for, judging gunnery sergeants. You're the highest fit rep that I've ever cut, and you're going to stay at the top of my tree. And I ran into him in 2014, right before I got out of the Marine Corps, when he was sent to my unit to wait to pin on colonel. he was a major, and he was waiting to pin on colonel and go to a billet at a wing. And he told me before I got out, he said, hey, Gunny, you're still number 1 on my list. And this was, freaking almost 10 years later. So I mean, I was lucky enough to have leadership that understood what was going on and did not, did not look down on me for what I was dealing with, but saw that I was still contributing and still doing my job, and that's what we got to do. We got to take away the stigma of going to get help.
For people who don't know the context, that's a huge credit to you and your command, because in 2006, we really weren't doing it right yet in the military, at least in the Marine Corps, because I know as late as 2012, there still wasn't a really good process, and we weren't dealing with it in a healthy way, I'll say. And the fact that back in 2006, kind of at the peak of when we were just about to start, the surge, all the stuff that had been going on by that time, in Iraq especially. And so I would say that's almost the peak of the combat bravado that everybody's going to be carrying, because everything was still looking great at that point. The end was kind of in sight, and that's the time that probably most people didn't want to hear about this kind of stuff. And for you to ask to go seek help, and then your command to be supportive of that, I mean, all of you guys were ahead of your time, I think.
Well, I don't know if my whole command was behind it, but I know that Gunner was behind it, and he took care of me.
Yeah.
And like I said, I served with him later at Miles 14 in Cherry Point. I served with him before he got promoted to major. When he was a captain, he was in the squadron, and he was like, "Hey, Gunny, I'm glad you're one of my guys," And then came back right before a month before I retired as a major lieutenant colonel select, and told me, he said, "Hey, you're still at the top of my list," and that meant something to me. I was probably, because there was a lot of guys in the Marine Corps that didn't like me, didn't get along with me. I don't care. I was doing my job the best way that I knew how, But to have him say that at the end of my career meant a whole hell of a lot.
And for people, the vast majority of people don't know how the Marine Corps fitness report system works, your evaluations. When officers rate their people, the system that came into effect, you will actually know who your top person that all the rest of your people are judged against, as far as, so instead of being judged on a 0 to 10 scale, you're judged on a scale of how far you are away from the best person that person has ever, had under them. So when he says that you're still his number one, literally you're his number one. Everybody else is their fitness reports are being judged by the point system and how far away they are from you. And so
oh wow.
Yeah, so there is a way for an officer to know who their number one is.
That's why it meant so much.
Absolutely. It's those people, right? Regardless of where you're at, whether you're serving in the military, whether you're working a corporate job or first responder, when you feel that your value has diminished, right? Personally, I'm speaking personally, and Mike, if this resonates with you, let me know. But when you feel that your value has diminished because you're dealing with what's going on in here, and when someone comes to you that you personally hold in a high regard, right? You almost kind of walk up to them embarrassed a little bit, maybe a little bit of shame, a little bit of guilt, and they're like, "Dude, like you're still my top one, bro." You know what I'm saying? That lifts up your spirit so much.
I'm telling you, I'm telling you, that's why it meant so much when this guy talked to me, because not only was he my OIC, he had been a staff NCO.
Okay.
He had done the job that I had done before he became a warrant officer, and then he went on to become a limited duty officer and retire as a lieutenant colonel. And to have a guy who had that much gravitas to what he did, to have that much of a background in the Marine Corps, where he'd been there, done that, seen that, been through that himself, say that kind of thing, it was like, all right, this means something.
Yeah. It makes you feel like, all right, fuck it, I got this. All right, let me get back on it, and I got this, right? So that's amazing. Talking about how do we prepare men and women for these events? And Nate, you kind of, in my perspective, kind of hit the nail on the head. We really can't prepare them for the event itself, but we can absolutely do a hell of a lot better job to prepare them for the aftermath and how to overcome that, right? Man, imagine having Mike in the schoolhouse, right? And when it comes down to mishaps, you have him come in and say, hey, privates and PFCs, this next section that we're going to go over is mishaps. It deals with more than just losing a plane or a helo. It deals with losing a fellow brother or sister. And we have someone here that would like to share their experience with you all, right? And now you've put someone in a senior leadership position, someone that's been, like Mike said, been there, done that, right? And
Yep.
now they're like, hey, look, what you're going to experience is something unlike anything a textbook can prepare you for. But what we can prepare you for is how to handle it in a healthy manner.
Luis, if anybody from the Navy wants to contact me and ask me to come to the schoolhouse and do that, I will gladly jump on that grenade.
Oh my goodness, that would be, yeah. I mean, I don't know. So someone correct me if I'm wrong in my thinking, but I think to have someone like that, right, at such a young age in your military career, before it really kicks off, and from that moment on, already start telling these young men and women, right, and even those that come in at 28, 30 years old, to us, those are not at our age, right? We see those 26, 30 year olds are like, man, y'all are still kids too.
Dude, I was 27 when I went to boot camp. You're talking about me.
Right?
You're older than
But
your
you
drill
still, right? But
instructors.
to
I
right.
was older than my senior drill instructor who was a gunny.
But yeah, absolutely. But to start right then and there, to tell them, to start putting into their brain housing group that it's okay to hurt, it's okay to cry, it's okay to have all these feelings. What's not okay is for you to go get stupid drunk every night in the barracks.
Yeah.
What is okay is for you to come talk to your leadership and say, hey, I'm just dealing with what we had to clean up, last week, and the shit's not fucking getting any easier. It's actually getting a lot worse, and I need
And
some
Luis,
help, to have that leadership.
one of the things you said, Luis, it's for maybe family members who had never been in the military, like parents of somebody that might not be able to understand it. I think something that's closely associated they could understand is if they've ever had to send somebody to the ER through an ambulance, right? When you have a life-threatening thing happen and you have to do it the first time you ever do it, you're suddenly very aware that there's no rule book and there's nobody ever taught you how you do it, and you're just muddling through it. It's kind of the same thing. Duckberry.
100%.
What you were talking about, Mike, was having great leadership and how uplifting that can be. That can be such a game changer. Remember, you and I, when we met up out in Denver, we were talking about other experiences with leadership that leaves a lot to be desired. People with crappy ethics and what that's like to deal with. And the reason why I mention that, not only was it a great discussion between you and I, it also comes up often in this webcast. The job is tough enough to deal with, and let's compound that with those suffering from the symptoms, adding to how tough it is to do the job. When leadership does not do its job under those circumstances, it makes service, seemingly, from everything you guys have ever told me, virtually unbearable to deal with. Go ahead.
I was just, the helicopter crash was only one of the things that caused me problems. Okay. There was a lot of things that were packed together in 2004, 2005, 2006 that affected me. One of the things was going to Banda Aceh in Indonesia for the tsunami relief. We were 8 miles off the coast of Aceh province. We were floating in a debris field that looked like we were in the middle of a garbage dump. There were trash bags, trees, dead animals and dead bodies, cars, pieces of houses. I mean, it was horrific. And one of the problems that I had during that time was while we sent the Marines ashore with heavy equipment, the grunts, the engineers went ashore with heavy equipment. They started cleaning up Aceh. There were a lot of people that died in that. And we were trying to clean up. And then the government was saying, okay, we're going to take all of your aid supplies. You're going to deliver them on the dock. We're going to take all the food and, send it out to the people. And the MUCO was a badass. I don't know if he disregarded what he was told or he got under the table okays or whatever, but he basically told the leader of that country, hey, screw you, we're taking the food out to the people in the provinces. And we flew rice and water and all kinds of food supplies, MREs, all that other good stuff out to the people. We were kicking them out of the helicopters to feed the people out in the provinces because we knew he was trying to crush, Tamil rebels and other people. So we didn't care about that. We cared about feeding the people that needed food, But while we were doing that, I was stuck on the ship and I was helping set up a water plant, making as an airframes mechanic, I made hydraulic lines and stuff like that. We put in the other part of my division was metalsmiths. They worked in manufacturing stuff out of metal and machinists. I mean, my shop, we could have built a motorcycle in my shop from scratch, if you gave us the stuff. So we were putting together water manifolds to help make the water delivery system for the purification for the water for the saltwater purification, to make it able to fill more than one jug at a time. We were doing that kind of stuff on the ship. But what happened was there were bodies floating around us. We're 8 miles offshore, and there's bodies floating around us. And one of the bodies that was bumping up against the ship, right below where my shop was. So if I went out the back door of my shop onto the catwalk to try to get air, I saw this body was a young child. I don't know if it was a male or female because it was face down in the water, but we couldn't pick up bodies. We couldn't bring disease onto the ship, and it was up to the host nation Navy to pick those bodies up. And it took them, I don't know, five days maybe to come get those bodies, and that body was the same age as my youngest child at the time, and I didn't realize that affected me. So again, another situation where you're dealing with death, you're dealing with horrific events that you have no frame of reference for before you deal with them. You just got to wait in and do your job until the job is done, and then deal with whatever afterwards. So, I mean,
Yeah, definitely. I think regardless of what our job entails in the military, obviously some of us might face it a little bit more than others, or a lot more than others, I should say. But there's always that understanding that what we get asked to do isn't always the prettiest things, right? It's not sexy. It's not, we ask a lot of our men and women, especially over the course of a 20-year war. One thing I've always was perplexed about was in 2005, I was in Al Asad. I was running convoys out of Al Asad, and we had the mortuary affairs group there. And I come to find out the mortuary affairs group that was made up of all these Marines, these young PFCs, lance corporals, young corporals, were all from they were all either cooks, they were all finance people, they were all postal clerks.
They all got fapped over to the duty. That wasn't their job. They got sent over there because they needed a body to fill a hole. And
Yup. They needed a body to basically fill up body bags. Let's call it what it is, right? And
oh,
the
Jesus
amount of
Christ, man.
young Marines who would have come over to medical. So I was with Bravo Surgical Company, but I was running convoys the whole time. So I was very rarely back at the hardened building. But the few times that I was there, um, yeah, I remember so many of those mortuary affairs Marines being there because, like we said, their training was all of, hey, you're gonna help recover bodies and see dead people. If you have a problem with that, go see medical. Like I think that was the extent of their training. And
Jesus.
and to we asked this of so many of our military personnel, and it's so yeah, so our job in the military um definitely is not sexy at all times whatsoever.
You know,
But I'm just
no,
rambling, you guys.
you brought up something that irritated me when I was at headquarters Marine Corps doing manpower, and we would go through these. There's this process where you justify how many of each kind of Marine you need for every kind of unit, and we were always slapping the table on these. They're called tables of organization and tables of equipment. In the table of organization, we'd always slapping the
Yo,
table saying it's right, it's right. I'm like, yeah, if we've got it so right, then why do we have all these IA billets? If we have every time we create these units and have to take people from all over the place to fill it, that's a problem. That means that we didn't forecast what we need and we haven't built our force correctly. And it irritated the crap out of me. And because the Marines would just get it done and get it taken care of, the officer says to the senior staff NCO, here's what we need done. The staff NCO is going to get it done. Right? And because it got done,
yeah.
everybody thinks there's no problem. And
Absolutely.
I had a couple of buddies who were on IA billets. One of them actually ended up flying combat missions and acting as a door gunner, training Iraqis, right? No combat aircrew wings, flew many missions, and luckily he was at a joint staff, and the Air Force recognized him with the air medals and stuff like that, but couldn't even get combat aircrew wings because he didn't go through combat aircrew school. And another buddy, that was Carl Cole. I had another buddy who was a gunny, Kenjiro, and I don't know if he was on an IA billet or if he was just with the Maus, but he was actually at Bastion in 2012 when the terrorists came through the fence with suicide vests on and blew up a AV-8 squadron.
Yeah.
Wrecked it. And we lost the CO of that squadron. Colonel Rabel died in that attack, and one of our Maus Marines, Sergeant Atwell, died in that attack. And I knew both those Marines as well.
Yeah.
Colonel Rabel I knew as an aircraft maintenance officer when he was a major. I inspected his squadron, and Atwell was a lance corporal in Maus 13 when I was there in Yuma. He was in the avionics department, and he was actually a sergeant when he was KIA in 2012 or 2013, I think, when that attack happened. Just crazy stuff. And how do you prepare? I mean, we say every Marine's a rifleman, right? You got to expect to be exposed to this kind of stuff. But how do you prepare somebody who works in an avionics shop fixing electronics or flies aircraft for ground combat?
Yeah, 4 weeks at Marine combat training doesn't cover it.
Yeah.
No,
yeah.
absolutely.
But Marines get it done, and then they deal with the after effects later.
100%. And y'all two, Nate and Mike, said it perfectly. The Marine Corps, okay, maybe I'm a little biased towards the Marine Corps a little bit, even though I was a Navy squid, but abso-fucking-lutely, the Marine Corps will get it fucking done, and I think that cost us a little bit. Like Nate said, you tell some colonel, some lieutenant colonel, hey, this is what your unit needs to get accomplished, make it fucking happen. He or she is gonna make it fucking happen. That staff NCO unit is gonna ensure it fucking happens. Those NCOs are going to ensure it fucking happens. And I think that mentality is a
Be right
great
back,
mentality.
guys. I gotta make a head call. I said I'll be right back. I gotta make a head call.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, you're good. You're good. But I think, like we're just, and I know Mike knows where I'm going with this is it comes at a detriment as well too, right? It's great to have that
That's
mentality.
the word I was thinking.
It's great to have the. It's great to have the mentality of we're fucking Marines. We're gonna get this shit done, regardless. And but it comes at a cost.
To be clear, that officer and that staff NCO are not wrong for getting it done. What's wrong is the failure of higher headquarters, of course, Marine Corps, to not properly identify those requirements even after the fact and go, hey, this is something we need to fix, or we need to start training people for it. That's the part that's messed up. And
100%. It's almost like you know they're gonna get it done, but the higher ups, the higher Marine Corps level, isn't giving them the proper tools to get it done the right way.
Yeah, and you know,
but Marines get it done. Like Nate said, Marines get it done.
Detriment.
Right.
But one of the things
to our own detriment.
Hey,
sometimes.
that's what makes us America's 911 force, right?
100%.
Yeah, I mean, if
100%.
If they told the Marine Corps, hey, you know what? We've decided that NASA does need another space shuttle. We need to build one. They'll figure it out. It's not the best way to do it, but they'll figure it out. You know.
Yeah, you'll get a whole bunch of Lance Corporals that will turn an AAV into a space shuttle. You know what I'm saying?
But one thing something I was thinking about when Mike was talking about his friend who was put into a combat air crew. That's something that irritates me because I go to a support group that's got probably 25% Vietnam vets, and one of the guys there was in the infantry and spent his whole career as a door gunner. And part of the problem that he had with proving his PTSD was they're like, well, you weren't part of an air crew, so why were you a door gunner? And wow, I'm going to keep saying that over and over now. But it's like the combat air crew wings. It's was the purpose of that to recognize how they served, or to recognize that they passed a whole bunch of exams. And
exactly. The only proof that Carl Cole has of what he did was there's actually a picture of him on the cover of Marines magazine, knee deep in brass, standing in the doorway of behind a gun, shooting. And why did they deny him aircrew wings? Because he didn't go through aircrew school. Because he didn't do the syllabus, the training syllabus. It's bullshit.
It's wrong.
Yeah. So, just to retrack a little bit for those that are in the audience, and those that will watch in a future event. So, an individual augmentee, which is what an IA stands for. With the exception of very small roles. I don't want to say small roles, but with the exception of certain MOSs, or in the Navy, we call them NECs, Navy Enlisted Classification Codes, MOS, Military Occupation Specialty. With the exception of very few of them, you can honestly, take, let's say, in the Navy, someone that's been trained how to paint a ship, a bosun's mate, you can augment that person to go to a security force. And they might send them to a 2-week, 3-week course on how to properly handle a weapon, how to put on their vest, and how to stand gate guard. So yeah, same thing in the Marine Corps. And you gentlemen, please correct me if I'm wrong. Like, Mike said, you could take a Marine that's never gone to a school to be in the air side of the house, but they need that body, right?
Sure.
And a lot of people think like, well, how hard is it to train someone to stand in front of a gun, and if you see a threat, pull the trigger? Hey, you're gonna go. You're ready.
This is what happened to Carl when he went to the IA billet. Right, he's a calibration technician. He calibrates gauges. He calibrates benches. He makes sure that stuff is like mirrored correctly. To do stuff. He shows up to this joint billet, and the Air Force colonel that's running the joint billet looks at him and goes, "Oh, you're a Marine? You're a weapons specialist. Go to the armory." And so, because he's a Marine and he knows how to handle a Maudus or a freaking saw or 40. He gets stuck in the armory, and then he ends up flying missions and training Iraqis how to be door gunners.
Right.
Yeah,
and that's how a calibration technician ends up knee deep in brass.
there's no shortage of staff NCOs and officers who went to Iraq and Afghanistan and were on IA billets that had absolutely nothing to do with what they went there being told they were going to do something very specific, whether it was in alignment with their MOS or not. And they would get there and find out that, hey, they already filled it with somebody else, so now you're going to go do this other thing. And they just got, you put your hand up, say, yeah, I'll do that job, and then they throw you on a different grenade.
And as a Marine, what do? Get the mission accomplished, right? Do what needs to be done. That's our mentality,
100%.
And people who aren't Marines and aren't FMF corpsmen don't understand that.
Right.
I've talked to plenty of Air Force guys that are like, but why were you doing a job that wasn't your job? Because it needed to be done.
Yeah, I was an enlisted instructor at the basic school one time, and I spent the holiday weekend taking these steel pallet boards and digging them into the ground on a trail that officers ran on. The maintenance shop wasn't doing it; I was doing it. Weird stuff.
Yep.
Yeah.
But getting back to what we're talking about, I think regardless of who you put in place to carry out and execute these missions, if you have a great leadership team that harbors a place of understanding, harbors a place of hey, we're here to take care of you as the person, because if we don't take care of you, then the mission's doesn't matter at the end of the day. I think if we can start implementing that mindset in our military, right, with especially I would hope now, I've been retired now 5 years, something like 4 years, 5 years, but I would hope, now that we have most of our senior leaders in the military now are the ones that are the only ones that saw Iraq and Afghanistan. All these new joins don't know what war or a wartime military is like. And I would hope that these leaders that are now senior leaders, right, E7s, E8s, E9s, even our 05s, 06, 07s, that had to go into harm's way and deal with a lot of the stuff that we all have dealt with, right? Are harboring these places for these young men and women to feel, I don't want to use the word safe, but I guess that's the only word I know how to use, but to feel safe, to be like, hey, right now I'm just hurting and I just need some help, because the mission that's going to come around the corner, I don't feel I'm going to be as well prepared for you all as I should be. Go ahead, Mike.
I think that has to do with how the leader was raised, because I mean, okay, I was exposed to really good leaders when I was young. First of all, the person who taught me to be a good staff NCO was not a Marine. He was an Air Force Chief Master Sergeant. I called him Dad. Okay. The other people that I was exposed to, Mark Galate, Gunnery Sergeant Mark Galate, Master Sergeant Gail Galate, Gunnery Sergeant Kevin Sly, these kind of people taught me to care about my Marines. If you don't care about your Marines, and if your attitude is not, I'm going to take care of them, something's wrong. I can't remember which Marine Corps leader it was. It just keeps coming back to Puller, Chesty Puller, but said something about having a father-son relationship with your Marines, or a father-daughter. In, we have a mixed Marine Corps, but have a fatherly relationship with your junior Marines. And you know what? That's what led me not to send those young lance corporals into that fucking helicopter, because I knew what was in there, and I didn't want them to have to deal with it. I was, at the time, I was a 47-year-old man. You know, I figured I had already had enough life experience where if I had to deal with something rough, that I could deal with something rough. Some 19-year-old kid didn't need to be crawling around in someone else's bloody entrails to get a job done just because the job needed to be done.
Yeah.
He didn't need to live with that for the rest of his life. As a 19-year-old, I mean, come on. He had so much life ahead of himself. I looked at that person as my son. You know, I looked at those people as my children. And I don't know. Maybe it's because I went to boot camp when I was 27 years old. I mean, that's why when I was a Lance Corporal, I was running a shop and sitting in a staff NCO billet because I wasn't a typical 18-year-old Lance Corporal knucklehead. I had already run a tune-up shop for 5 years almost before I got in the Marine Corps. And, you know, the Marine Corps was a decision to let my wife out of the military because my daughter was really, really sick. And my wife was deployed and they wouldn't let her come home. So I chose when I was 27 to go to boot camp. And I knew I was starting over, but I carried that maturity with me through every single rank that I was at. And I don't know if that helped me or hindered me. Well, I know it hindered me at the end because I was an old fucking man trying to keep up with guys who were 10 years younger than me. But you know, I mean, you have to have that kind of relationship with your young Marines. You can't just be the boss during working hours. You can't demand respect because of your rank. You have to earn respect, and then you have to treat those people like family and take care of them because you need to return them to their parents when they're done with their military service. And a lot of those guys only spend 4 years or 6 years in. You know, they get out when they're 22, 24, 26 years old. They go back home.
75% of them just do their minimum service obligation.
I had a gunnery sergeant when I was in Okinawa that sent somebody to do something dangerous that I tried to shut down because it was against regulations. It was hazardous. He was making him work with something that could kill him without the proper protective equipment. And I had to go to the mag hazmat guy, who luckily was Gunnery Sergeant Galate, who I knew from Beaufort, say, "Hey man, they're doing something wrong," and call down an inspection on them without them knowing that I did it. From Marine Aircraft Group to shut them down so that they would quit causing these people to work with this hazardous chemical without the proper safety equipment. And what do? They lied about what they were doing, and they made sure that I had to check in with them before I left to go inspect what they were doing. And I checked in with the front office every time I left to inspect, and the front office would call them and say, "Okay, put away everything that's illegal. Anderson's coming over." And, you know, I had a kid named Chopla who was, was a Lance Corporal, and he was like, "Aye, Gunny," you know, and he did what the Gunny told him to do, not what the Staff Sergeant told him to do. And I saw him 2 years later, and he was having problems with cysts in his lungs and everything else because he was breathing this hazardous material. And all the Gunnery Sergeant cared about was making mission, doing what he's supposed to do, and not getting his ass chewed. And I'll tell you what, if I ever catch that Gunnery Sergeant again, I'm going to kick his fucking ass because he caused that guy to have medical problems for the rest of his freaking career.
Yeah. Is the huge difference between a tyrant and a leader, you know, is look who they produce in the end.
Mm-hmm.
I'm telling you, I'm still friends with Chops on Facebook, and I talk to him every once in a while. And he's doing okay. He's in his 40s now, but he was a young 20-something, you know. And there's no telling when he's 60, 70 years old if he's going to have problems breathing because he got cysts in his lungs because he was breathing paint stripper that he wasn't supposed to be breathing because he didn't have a forced air respirator. I mean, that Gunnery Sergeant, like I said, if I catch him. And that was the bad example that showed me that I needed to care about my Marines.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, people forget that when once you get into leadership, you are stewarding America's sons and daughters.
That's what you and Mike both said, Nate. Man, that's a great way. I've never really have ever thought of it that way, right? Even though I spent 22 years in the Navy, but you're a steward of American sons and daughters, and eventually, like Mike said, we have to return those sons and daughters back to America, right? And we definitely don't want to send them back all fucked up. You know what I mean? And it's our job as leaders, right, to protect them as much as we can. And that's what I hear. What Mike, when I hear you talk about, you know, the reason I decided for me and the other staff NCO to go take care of that is it reminds me of when you see either on movies or even in real life. In real life, um, you know, let's say a child gets hit by a car right crossing the street, and you hear the parents say, "Give me the pain, give me that burden, give me the broken bones, give me the cancer, give me the illness." That's what I hear when I hear you talk, Mike. Is in that moment you recognize the hazard and you said, "No, give it to me," because my young little brothers and sisters don't need to go through that. And I applaud you for that. I commend you for that. Definitely for me, it's a testament of a strong leader. And I'm sure those men and women, they might not understand it because they didn't have to go see it, but I can assure you that they are very appreciative that they had
Yeah,
someone
you
like
didn't
you to
you didn't
stand
rob
up
them, you didn't
and,
rob
and
them
take
of an
that pain.
experience. You protected them from it.
Fuck no. Hmm.
that's what I was trying to do. And, you know, I didn't make friends doing it. There's a lot of times where people said, God, the mission comes first, Anderson. What the fuck are you doing? And I was like, protecting my fucking Marines.
Yeah.
You know,
Some of them got it, some of them didn't. You know, I have young Marines now that I've tried to contact since I got out that are like, Gunny, go away. I don't want to talk to you. You suck. You know what? It doesn't matter if you think I suck. You're one of my best Marines, and I'm glad that I got a chance to be your Gunny.
Yeah.
there's a lot of examples where people will say, you know, how come the sergeant major and the lieutenant colonel were on the bird for the trap mission? You know, to tactical recovery of aircraft and personnel. You know, or why was the captain leading this frontal assault? You know, and they
Hmm.
weren't up front out of ego, they were up front out of heart. You know, that's what it comes down
Hmm.
to. I mean, I'm sure there's probably
Well,
some examples of people who are there by ego, but I think by far they're the exception.
Right.
I got that from my grandfather. I got that from my father. I got that from Mark and Gail Galate and Kevin Sly and all of the good staff at COs that I ever worked for and worked with.
Hmm.
And I'm glad that I worked with those people because they taught me how to be a leader. They taught me what it meant to be a gunnery sergeant. I'm also glad that I was a gunnery sergeant for eight years because I got a chance to work all through that rank, from being a young gunny to being the salty old guy. You know, I enjoyed every minute of it. I miss the people. I don't miss the circus.
Yeah.
I
Absolutely.
think somebody said it before.
I you know, I think a lot of us in the military, we always talk about, like, you know, what do you think is the best rank to have? And I think there's never always just one best rank to have. I think certain ranks have absolutely their highlights. But I could honestly say just about every gunnery sergeant I've ever met, whether they retired at the level of a gunnery sergeant or continued on, has always said gunnery sergeant has been the best, their favorite
Oh
rank to
yeah.
ever hold.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
and I think for a lot of junior personnel, and I can only speak about myself. Now I had respect for everyone, right? From my privates all the way up to the sergeant major, but there was always something about the company gunny, fucking the gunny, that old crusty gunny. You don't hear about the old crusty first sergeant or the old crusty sergeant major that still gets their hands dirty. You hear about that old crusty gunny that will tell first sergeant to go fuck off, stay in his fucking lane, right?
I was,
And
I
that
was,
gunny will go get dirty with his Marines or her Marines.
I was talking to somebody today. They were making a comment about something I posted on Facebook. Luis, Doc, you're connected to my Facebook account. You probably saw that thing about the gunny. Knowing everybody. And he said, Jesus, that's so funny. And I told him, I said, hey, listen, Gunny was the best rank in the Marine Corps because you were the shit stopper. You stopped the shit from the bottom up.
Okay.
Right? You took care of your Marines below you. If they were doing shitty stuff, you took care of it. And you stopped the shit from the top down. If the CO or the sergeant major or somebody came down on you and said, you need to do this, you need to do, you were the barrier between yourself and your young Marines. I fucking loved being a gunny, dude. I loved it.
So,
I was going to say, well, if you're going to start something new, go ahead.
I was going to take it a little different direction, but I didn't want to throw you off. Oh, so Mike, answer me this question, because believe it or not, it wasn't towards maybe the end of my Navy career that I started hearing this nickname. And I never heard it. And I was with AAVs, I was with grunt units. My gunnery sergeants, I always knew them either as gunnery sergeants or gunny. But towards the end of my career, I would want to say maybe about the last 6 years of my career, I started hearing the nickname guns. Where does that come from? Now, I do understand that the rank of gunnery sergeant when it was established was because they were usually the most senior sergeant that knew how to operate the guns on the ships, right? Back in the day when that's what really Marines, and I'm talking about back in when we still had wooden ships.
Oh yeah.
Right. So is that where the whole nickname guns come from? Do you know or anything like that, or?
Yeah. It was from the guys who actually knew what the hell they were doing, and they were the one that was in charge of the guns. And so guns was like, okay, gunnery sergeant is what I was. Yeah, that was my rank. There were only a few people that ever called me gunny, and those were the people that respected the rank, this, that, and the other thing, and I had to correct a couple people that tried to, call me gunny when they didn't rate to call me gunny. About rating something, right? Hey, gunny, shut up, Lance Corporal, I'm a gunnery sergeant, that kind of thing. But there were only two people that ever called me guns. One of them was the officer that I told you about that said, guns, you're at the top of my chart.
Okay.
The other one on active duty that called me that was a lieutenant colonel that knew me very, very well. He knew me when he was a captain. I was a sergeant. I kind of I found about $80,000 worth of equipment that he had lost. Found. And he respected me for that. His people were doing something that they weren't supposed to do, and I kept the equipment that they said was trash. And when he came up short, I said, "Hey, sir, here are the things that you need." And he was like, "Where did you get these from?" And I said, "This is what your people are doing. They're calling these trash. They're not trash. They're repairables." And so I've kept them, even though they said to throw them away. And since you're short, here they are. So me and that lieutenant colonel knew each other. He was actually my last CO. I won't tell you his last name. He was known as Bubba by his peers. But Bubba and I went to church together as well. So I kind of knew him outside. He called me Killer. I called him Bubba. That was the other guy that called me guns. And then the only other person that's ever called me guns, you guys who met me in Denver know that I work at the Air Force Academy at the commissary as a bagger. I do that because that's a contract job. I work for tips only, and I don't owe anybody anything. And I don't, if I want a day off, I just call and say, "Hey, I'm not coming in today." And I did that because with PTSD, that was the best thing for me to do, set my own schedule, not have to worry about signing my name on people's stuff that they were flying on, that kind of thing. Well, one of my regular customers was one of Chesty's privates at Chosen. And then his last combat tour was in Vietnam as an LDO captain that was an aircraft maintenance officer. He's about 95 years old. His name is Joe. And he, you know, he calls me Guns. Every time he comes in there, he's like, "Hey Guns, what's going on? Hey sir, looking good today. How you doing?" You know, and it's a mutual respect thing. There are very few people that call me Guns. Very few people that call any gunnery sergeant Guns.
And
those are people that he respects and that respect him.
you see it.
Got it.
And I'm sure you saw this too, Mike. Over the course of career, you see how the culture slowly changes as things change. And when I first came in, you know, people were just beginning to call master gunnery sergeants master guns, and I think it started to flow down from that. And that, like you're saying, like Mike is saying, you've got to earn that kind of level of man. You've got to earn that level of familiarity with somebody, and so
got it.
3 people in my whole career.
So gunny's the first level of familiarity, but Guns, you know, that's only somebody who's not going to have to worry. Somebody senior to the gunnery sergeant who has nothing to worry about as far as pushback on it can get away with something like that. And I saw the same thing happen.
That's
with,
like,
you know, when I crossed over and made captain, there were still some old guys that were still calling me skipper. You know, and that's a really old tradition. And in the actually in the early 90s too, like the correspondence manual still said that it was appropriate to refer to lance corporals as corporal. Well, that's because there was a time when Marine Corps didn't have lance corporals. But anybody try to do that now, they'd look at you like you're crazy. And we used to have technical sergeants in the Marine Corps too for a while, but that was way before my time.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, that was back in World War One, I believe. We had the technical sergeant.
Well, between World War II and Korea, there were a lot of rank changes.
That's what it was. Okay.
That's when they switched over, I think, too, to having, you know, the curved rocker on the bottom instead of a straight line.
A straight line, yeah.
Guns is for the guy who outranks you, that walks up to you in the parking lot outside the Marine Corps Ball when you're smoking a cigarette or whatever, cigar, since you can't smoke cigars inside. And I only smoke cigars at the Marine Corps Ball, and goes, "Hey, Guns, need a nip?" And it pulls out his flask. You know?
Well, you know, Mike, to be fair, Mike, because you're older, you ran into the same thing that LDOs, warrant officers, and Mustangs run into. The only people that are your age are far senior to you. So, when there's nobody around,
when I came home
behind the curtain.
When I came home in 2011, I went to the sergeant major and I said, "Hey, sergeant major, I think I'm going to put in my retirement." And I was at 19 and a half years. I said, "I want to go to 22. I'm putting in my retirement." He's like, "Oh, gunnery sergeant, what are you doing? You're going to be a master gunnery sergeant. You need to stick around." And I said, "Sergeant major, I'm too fucking old." And he looks at me and goes, "What? What are you talking about? I'm fucking 38. And I just laughed at him and said, "Sergeant major, I'm 47. He's like, I'll take those retirement papers now." So I retired about 6 months before I turned 50 at 22 years service. So yeah, you're right. It was the older guys. It was the chief warrant officers and the LDOs that I ran into that were my age. In fact, when I was in Afghanistan in 2011, my sergeant major, he was funny. We were supposed to run squadron PT, you know. We're out running, staff NCOs running with the sergeant major, and sergeant major dropped back and he was like, "Hey, Gunny, why are you running at the back of the pack?" I looked at, you need to set the example. I said, "Hey, sergeant major, I'm too fucking old." And he looked at me and said, "What do you mean you're too old?" And I said, I'm 47, sergeant major. And he goes, "Oh, Jesus, I need to start calling you sir." I said, "What? What are you talking about, sergeant major?" And he goes, "The only people who I call sir are people who are older than me, and they're usually colonels, sir." So, you know, I was like, "Okay, sergeant major." He was a hell of a guy, though.
You know, it's good to it's always good because you know sometimes, and like we did at the beginning of the podcast, you know, we sometimes bring up not the best part of our job, right? We usually bring up the stuff that has given us some heartache, some turmoil, right? But it's good to share these stories and laugh, because I honestly feel that our 90% of our career is filled with this stuff, right? With the laughter, with the joke, with all that stuff, right? It's just unfortunately like everything in life, it's the bad stuff that usually gets highlighted. But talking about being old, so I mean, I joined the Navy, at 18 years old. But I ended up going to a Navy school that mainly reserved for the young guys, and I went to Navy dive school, deep sea dive school, and I was 31 at the time. I was, everyone else in school was 18, 17, 18, 19-year-old young kids, that just, coming from high school or college, right? And
guys, I'll be right back. I'm 60. I need to make another call.
No, you're good. But what I was gonna say is, I got the nickname of being called Papa Smurf during dive school because I was old as shit and I was short as shit.
Something Mike said to me, I can't stop thinking about it. It's like, and you were saying this too, Luis, but to paraphrase Mike, yeah, we do like talking about the circus here, but the best part is when we start talking about the carnies.
Yes, yeah.
I miss the carnies.
Yep.
Man.
So talking about nicknames for ranks, do you know by any chance, Nate, where we got the nickname of calling Master Sergeants as top?
No, actually, you know what? That's funny. How come I never thought about that one? I have no idea where that came from. Huh.
Mike, I was just asking Nate if he by any chance knew, because we were talking about nicknames, right, for different rank structures in the Marine Corps. If he knew, and if you know where we got the nickname top for Master Sergeants.
I don't know where it came into use, but I'll tell you, normally, well, at least on the aviation side, right? The Master Sergeants and the Master Gunnery Sergeants were few and far between, and they were usually the highest ranking guy that you ever dealt with, unless you went to see the Sergeant Majors. So they were the top of the food chain,
Makes sense.
the top sergeant that you dealt with, and that's where top came from.
Oh, okay.
I heard you guys talking while I was in the head about Papa Smurf.
Yeah.
When I was in boot camp, my senior drill instructor, Staff Sergeant Okonski, who made Gunny by the time I got out of there, but his nickname for me was Archibald Anderson.
Don't tell people that it's behind that.
Oh, okay. Well, Archibald Henderson was the grand old man of the Marine Corps. He was commandant for over 30 years. He was commandant so long. He stayed in the commandant's house for so long at headquarters Marine Corps that he tried to leave the commandant's house to his son in his will.
Oh, no way, I didn't know that part.
Oh yeah. So he's the grand old man of the Marine Corps, and that was Archibald Henderson. He's the guy that wrote on a piece of paper, "Gone to fight the Indians," when he went to the Seminole War down in Florida. Left it on his office door, and I guess it was in the Navy Yard. I don't know where their office was back then, but yeah. So he's called the grand old man of the Marine Corps, and I was the grand old man of boot camp. So was Archibald Anderson.
Nice. So,
or aren't you bald, Anderson?
Oh wow!
So one thing about Mike and I actually talk about our old age. We actually met each other back in Paris Island.
And the Molly Marine.
Yeah, for the Molly Marine 5K run, and man, I don't know what. Oh crap! Where'd it go? I don't know, Mike.
2008.
Yeah, what year time frame was that? 2008.
Yeah, 2008, I think, 2009, somewhere around there. I came down from Cherry Point, so it had to be after 2008 and before 2014. So that's where we met Burwell, Molly, and Maria, and all those people. from TWS.
Yeah,
We met him
so
in person
people
down there.
don't know
Mike,
that-
is that you right there?
I can't tell, dude. I'm 60. I can't see that
I
picture.
know
It's so small on my screen.
yeah, it's so same here, same here. But I know I'm standing right here. Molly
me see if I can make it
Burwell
bigger.
people
is
don't know
right
Molly
there.
is one of our former guests too.
Yeah.
Uh,
So
if you're looking for me, you're looking for the bald head in the very back
Yeah.
row on the. Yep, that's me.
that's you, right? Yeah, that's what I
Yep.
thought. And
That's me.
but to not confuse anyone, so Molly Burwell is not who the Molly Marine 5K run is named after.
Oh no! Oh no! That's named after Molly.
Yeah.
The Molly Marine.
Yep.
The original statue there on Paris Island, and can't remember. Ophame Johnson, is that who Molly
Ophame
Marine was
Johnson.
named after?
The first female Marine. Yep.
Yep.
But
Yep.
I remember I
simplified all my sisters.
so I used to drink back in those times, and
So did I.
and I
A lot
remember
more than I do now.
and I remember we got pretty hammered there at the was it the
At the
Brig and
Brig and
Brew?
Brew.
Yeah, the Brig and Brew. So if anyone's still at Paris Island, is the Brig and Brew still around?
The Brig and Brew is still around.
Oh, it is.
In fact, I have a buddy on Facebook. Well, I'm still connected to him on Facebook. Top Colin Tony, Master Sergeant Colin Tony. He works at FRC East now, the depot level repair facility at Cherry Point. But we were stationed together in Mouse 14 there at Cherry Point, and he went down to Paris Island for a graduation this week, and he actually posted pictures from the Brig and Brew. So yeah, it's still there.
Nice. I'm gonna have to I'll be down in that area for oh, I don't think I've told any of you gentlemen this, but I was invited to be the guest speaker for Beaufort, South Carolina, the Marine Corps Air Station based down there, for their 250th Marine Corps birthday celebration.
Wow.
So funny story.
I'll definitely have to go down to PI and check out the Brig and Brew. Go ahead.
Funny story about Marine Corps Air Station Beaufort. So that F-18 that's outside the front gate, right? When I was working on F-18s and I was at Mal's 31 in Beaufort, I was a Stinger in the early 90s. That aircraft actually was in a mishap. It was taking off, and it sucked the turkey buzzard through the engine, and it had to do a hard landing, and it shaved off the end of the wing and the end of the horizontal stab, and so it went into depot level repair. We were waiting for a wing to replace it. We were waiting for a stab to replace it to get it back on. Well, they could never get the parts that they needed. So what they did is they came to us and said, "Hey, we're going to turn this into a static display." Okay, no problem. So airframes, we do all the metal work, all the hydraulic work, and that kind of stuff. So we're the guys who were supposed to make it look like brand new, even though it wasn't flyable. So we had to kind of like mock out the stab, mock out the wing, make it look like it was brand new, even though we had, put metal patches on it instead of the composite that it normally has. It was sitting in the hangar, and it was ready to go out to the front gate, right? And we had a front strut that was bad, and there were no front struts in supply, and we got it in as what's called an XREP, an expedient repair. It has to be, you have to stay at work until it's fixed, because it has to go on an airplane, because the airplane has to fly the next day. So I'm freaking out. I'm at work. I'm like, how are we going to get the stab out the door, the strut out the door, so that this plane can fly tomorrow? And I call my Gunny Joel Hare, and I said, "Gunny, hey man, what are we going to do?" He goes, "Is that plane still in the hangar?" I said, "Yeah, it's still in the hangar." He goes, "All right, here's what you do." And he came to work. We actually went out into the hangar, jacked up the front of the bird until it loosened the gland nut on the strut and extended the strut all the way, and then started pulling the front wheel forward right? Until we could pull the inner piston out of the strut. We took all of the springs and all of the guts out of the inside of the piston, and we took them back into the shop, and we used that to fix the strut that was in the shop. Now we got a strut on a bird that's in the hangar. What the fuck are we going to do? We put the strut back in, right? We tightened down the gland nut. We lowered the jacks, and the bird goes nose down. We were like, oh shit. Someone's going to know we messed with this. So I said, Gunny, what do we do? He goes, jack that thing back up a level now. Jacked it up a level. He called in one of the welders. The welders came in and he welded around the gland nut. He welded a bead on both sides of the gland nut so the bird sat level. We're like, okay, cool. No one's going to find out about this. This is awesome, man. We got that bird out. We got that strut out the door. We got that bird out the door. Good to go. The next day, they came with a tow tractor to tow that bird out to the front gate to put it up on the static display, right? They could not get the wheel to turn. They did not know why it wouldn't steer to go down the road. By the time they got it out of the front gate, they had went through 2 tires and 2 wheel assemblies because they were just dragging it. It was blowing the tire. It was shaving the wheel down. So they get it out the front gate, they put a wheel on it, and they come back to us and they go, hey, airframes, were you messing with that bird? And we were like, I don't know what you're talking about, man. So my Gunny was like, dude, if you ever say anything about this, you're in trouble. Right. Okay, that was in 93 or 94, something like that. It's 2025. I'm fessing up. We did it.
Yeah.
Good Marine Corps.
Oh, yeah.
When I go there, I might have to go to that plane, take a picture of it. I'm going to look for the wells and take...
Point it.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
Mike That's and the Marines are like, we don't know. That's how the aircraft's always been. We've had a hell of a time with it as well.
Exactly. Hey, sir, they needed the parts out of that. We robbed it. I mean, come on. You didn't know it was welded? I mean, you know, what's the deal? So that's what I mean when I say I don't miss the circus. I miss the monkeys.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. So, oh, man.
So if you go to that static display of the F-18 and look on the front strut, I bet you'll find the welds on it still.
Yeah. Man.
And then you can tell that story.
No, absolutely. That's exactly what I'm going to do is be like, I know the Marines that did this.
Someday, whoever was on that crew that had to pull that thing, hopefully they hear this one day and they're gonna come back with all their frustration.
Right?
Son of a bitch, I knew someone messed with that thing. Hey, we got the strut up, we got the strut out, ready for issue RFI, and that bird flew the next day, so there wasn't nothing wrong with that.
Get it done. Get it done. That's all it needs.
Get her done.
Get her done.
You would not believe how many parts were robbed off of that thing.
Cannibalizing.
It's like
that's what I mean.
No, that's what I was going to say. In AAVs, we usually had like 1 or 2 tracks that were all cannibalized. They should have gone to like I think it's called the depot, right? Like when they DRMO it or whatever it is. Depot level. But they just leave. Yeah, but they just leave them there on the ramp. We call it the ramp, because
we just call them hangar queens.
Yeah, you just can't get the parts in a timely manner. So you just go,
dude,
rip it off that old AAV, put it on the one that you need, and take off.
In 2003, when MAG 13 went to Iraq, right? When we did the initial entry into Iraq. Of course, I'm the new guy. I got there in 2002. They're like, "Hey, new guy, you're staying back with all the broke, lame, and lazies." So I didn't get to go, but everybody on Yuma went. All the Harriers went, and the only thing that was left was one Harrier that they had robbed blind, that didn't have anything left on it except the outer skin, and it got transferred to the Marine Aviation Logistics Squadron. That's what MAL stands for. It got transferred to MALS 13, and we actually were the custodians of that aircraft, and that's the only time that that organizational level has sent an aircraft to Mel's as a a transfer, and we were in charge of keeping track of all the parts that were ordered on that thing and making sure they got on it when it came in. So it was the only bird that was left behind at Yuma when all the Harriers deployed in 2003 to Iraq.
Man, I wouldn't have wanted to been the first pilot to fly that thing after all the repairs.
Absolutely.
I don't know if it wasn't made into a doggone static display or not. I mean, who knows? You know, when they came back, we busted our asses for about 12 hours a day, probably 3 or 4 months, cleared off our maintenance action forms and our action board. And I was getting yelled at, "Hey, Gunny, why are you sending your guys home every day at 8 o'clock in the morning?" Because when everybody comes back from Iraq, they're going to dump all their broken shit on us, and we're going to have to work 24 hours a day to get it out of the shop. And everybody who was in Iraq is going to be on block leave, and these guys that are here right now with me are going to be the ones that I'm telling to work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So they're getting their time off now.
Yeah, you know.
That's how you do leadership.
And Mike, you said something very profound, man. I never really understood it until I got stationed at Miramar, Marine Corps Air Station Miramar. And even then, I wasn't stationed at a squadron. I was stationed at the dental clinic. I was running the dental clinic. But when people make fun of the air wing side of the house, talking about, they're just chilling back, drinking beers on the flight line. No, I saw firsthand how much they actually fucking work the air side, the air wing.
You would not believe how many sergeants major come over into, and that's a proper way to say it, sergeants major, not sergeant majors. You would not believe how many sergeants major come over into the air wing after spending their whole career in the grunts and go, "Jesus Christ, I didn't know you guys worked so hard." Yeah, we do.
Yep.
We do. Why? Because we're in charge of keeping your CAS and your CASEVAC flying.
And air wing also has some stuff that's considered a theater national asset. Things that the president gets briefed on every morning. How many of them are up and how many of them are down.
Yeah, Doc.
I've been working for a number of years with an Air Force guy who did avionics. And he said the physical, and he's tall like I am, and he says guys like our size, we're not meant to fit in those tight constricted components of the aircraft. He said my shoulders and my back got so fucked up from working in those things in those weird positions for so many hours in the extreme heat, in the extreme cold, all hours of the night and day. And he said, people don't realize the amount of scrutiny that you're under because all your tools are labeled. They have to be put back in a certain order. All your parts are inventoried.
Yes, sir.
One thing that's missing, everything gets shut down and it's on your ass.
Yep. That's exactly what happens.
Yep.
I can't tell you how many hours I spent sitting under the stub wings of AH-1s when I was at Fukushima in Okinawa, trying to manufacture a hydraulic line from scratch because they would send it to us and say manufacture as per sample, and we'd manufacture it exactly like the sample was, with every bend and every angle correct, and they couldn't get it in the bird. So you would go back to the technical manuals and you would pull up the diagram and you would manufacture it exactly like the diagram, and it wouldn't fit in the bird. What happens with the AH-1s is the airframes torque. With the main rotor and the tail rotor, they torque, and so they're twisted, and so you have to sit there with a 1/4-inch aluminum line and kind of hand bend to make sure everything fit correctly. I'm sitting on my ass. I'm jammed down in a cramped position. I got 2 arms up inside this bird, and I'm trying to, manipulate this line into place. And then when you get it in place, you take it back to the shop and manufacture it the correct manner that it's supposed to be manufactured and send it back, and the guys are like, "Thanks, man, appreciate it, gotta fly today, what took you guys so long?" And you're like, really? It's just the way it works in the air wing. you spend a lot of time, especially the intermediate level guys. The maintenance at the O level guys, they would drop stuff at 16:30 at night, right? They would drop stuff at 16:30 and say, "Hey, this is an X rep, which means expedient repair. You can't go home until it's fixed. It's an X rep that has to go on a bird that's flying tomorrow morning." Why would they drop it at 16:30? So they could go home for the night. Because they knew it was going to take you all night to get it fixed.
You know, the
It was the
way
harrowing,
you're
man.
describing the improvisation that's involved. I also worked for a while with a guy who was a pipe fitter, not in the military, but a pipe fitter in a factory, in industry. And he described exactly the same thing. He says, there's no manual that we have to work. We have to improvise this shit, tube for tube, pipe for pipe, wire for wire. We're not working
Yep.
off anything, just, visual spatial relationships, what we see and what we can make with our hands. Sounds like the same thing.
Dude, I loved it.
Navy
I
has the same
loved it.
thing.
It was so challenging. It was so challenging, and it was so awesome to stand on the flight line and see those birds taking off, knowing they were either dropping off grunts, picking up prisoners, or going to drop bombs or drop ordnance on people who needed it on their foreheads.
Yeah. And that's where like it comes into play. Like we all have our part in that organization. You know what I mean? And I'll say this, and I say this in all genuineness, like no one has a much more important part than the other person. Now there's certain circumstances maybe that maybe someone's role might be a little bit more important than somebody else's. I would say yes. If Mike were out in the combat field and you get shot, I think my role is a little bit more important to you.
But
right?
if you guys are getting fire, if you guys are taking fire and you need Harriers overhead to drop
100%.
ordnance and lay down some freaking rounds, it's my job to make sure they're there.
Yep,
If
absolutely.
If you're in a bad firefight and you need to casevac somebody, it's my job to make sure the birds are flying.
Yep. And I mean, I think
That's what the Marine Corps team is all about.
Yeah, and I don't know if you guys have seen the movie yet, but the movie about the 6888 unit,
I've seen it.
Yeah,
The postal workers.
Yeah, the postal workers back in World War II, right, Mike?
Oh,
was it World War II?
Oh yeah, World War II.
All female, all black unit, and they got the mail delivered, right? They had this like backlog of 2 years worth of mail. They got it done in like 90 days. I mean, that shows you right there, like, we can make fun of those that aren't technically on the front line, but we all play such a crucial role in ensuring that everyone's morale, everyone's ready for the fight that's up ahead.
That's what caused that's what caused the biggest problem when I was in Iraq the second time. We had an airframe change come down to all of the 46s and 47s in the theater of operations. All the Army Chinooks, all the Air Force Sea Knights, the Marine Corps Sea Knights, they were all down, and we had to incorporate this airframes change. And we were short parts, and I looked in the part system, and they were there, and I ordered them, and the lieutenant said, "No, you can't have them because they're saved for emergencies." And I went over to supply, and I was like, "Lieutenant, what the hell are you talking about emergencies? Every single 46 and 47 in the combat theater is down right now. There's no casevac. There's no casevac. There's no prisoner drop-off. There's no troop drop-off. There's no troop pickup. There's no supply without these 46s. Sorry, that's an emergency. I can't give those to you." And I threatened to kick his ass. And I had to go talk to the maintenance officer about that because obviously the lieutenant went running to the major and said, "Hey, the gunny's picking on me. The gunny's picking on me." And I was like, "You're right, sir. I said I was going to kick his ass. Here's the deal." And the major was like, "Hey, lieutenant, listen to your gunnies. Give him his parts. He's right." And then he told me, "Gunny, if you ever say anything like that again, I'll kick your ass myself." And I was like, "Aye, aye, sir." I was dealing with an LDO. And the only problem, honestly, that generated is my son became a Marine and he chose not to take the shot. He was at his 9-year mark and his CO found out he was my son, and his CO was that lieutenant. So he did not have a very nice exit from the Marine Corps, and he has a bad attitude about the Marine Corps because of that, but he was vindicated in the end. It was an unlawful order, and he was called and asked multiple times, will you come back? And he's in a place now where he can tell him, no, I don't need to come back. I've done my duty. Thank you very much. Have a nice day. So, you know.
Yeah, it's just such a shame that, you know, policymakers, we'll just call them that, right? Policymakers can ruin the experience of some of these men and women during their time in service, right? Because like we said time and time again, when you talk about the memories that you have with those immediate people that were to your left and right of you, whether it was combat or not, doesn't matter, right? But you're going into the shop every day, and you have some of the most fondest memories that you're ever going to have in your life, right? You build a camaraderie, you get to know each other's families. For those that have families, you're hanging out with each other in the barracks or at somebody's house for cookouts or whatever it is, right? And it's just unfortunate that your son had to experience a part of our military history that wasn't the best, and policymakers made it, you know. So go ahead. Yeah.
What irritates me as a Desert Storm veteran is that about 95, 96, the country came out and said, never again are we going to force people to take anything experimental, because they did it in Desert Storm a whole bunch of times. And the country promised they'd never do it again. And then what do? Something happened and they just threw it out the window and did it again.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Which gives them more VA benefits. Good for it. Yep, 100%.
Quick question for 100%. You. Was any of your son's time combat time? Okay, so something. Okay, so something for him to consider. If he gets his if he gets his disability as combat related special compensation, then if he ever gets a civilian job, he doesn't have to buy back that 9 years. That 9 years he can tack on to his government time and use it towards retirement. Just something to be aware of. Wow, man. Good deal.
Good. Glad to hear that. Well, gentlemen, I hate to be that guy, but we are at our time. So, Mike, we like to just leave the last couple of minutes before we finally wrap up, just in case there's anything that maybe we didn't go over that you wanted to mention, anything you want to talk about, any last maybe pieces of advice from an old crusty gunny.
Amen. Good to go. Awesome.
Awesome. Love it. Love it. Well, gentlemen, with that being said, I don't think we can wrap it up any better. The last little piece that we have on Two Docs and a Grunt side is, hey, if you made it this far, please consider liking, subscribing, and following us in order so we can get more stories out, like Mike Anderson's story here. We have so many great men and women that have served this nation, and they all deserve a platform to share their story because each story is unique, each story is important, each story can serve us to learn something from, to carry us throughout our life as well. So, with that, gentlemen, thank you all so much for this evening. Definitely had a lot of great laughs. Mike, thank you. And the door and the invite is always open to you and your family that ever want to come on here and share more of your story. Especially you, Mike. I know you have so much more to share. 2 hours just isn't enough.
Yeah, it's great having you.
Hey, Mike, stay on with us after we hit the stop button. One more thing you got to know about. All right.
All right. Good evening,
Night, everyone.
everyone. All right, guys. And